Hello, hello, hello out there, world, and welcome back to the Millionaire By Morning podcast. We have a special guest with us today, George Pesansky. He's here to speak with us about what he is a specialist at, which is helping individuals, teams, and organizations reach their full potential. We're all trying to do the same thing if you're listening to this particular podcast. George is a recognized leader in operational excellence with a career spanning more than 30 years in performance, optimization, executive coaching, and systematic improvement. He has trained and coached over 10,000 professionals across 6 continents and helped Fortune 500 companies and nonprofits alike drive measurable results. He is the founder of Capacity to Care, a nonprofit encouraging super performers to donate their talent, not just their time, to improve outcomes in their communities. Known for his clarity, candor, and hands-on approach, George is now bringing his best practices to readers everywhere with his book, Superperformance. Welcome to the Millionaire by Morning podcast, George.
Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. I would really like to dive into this book, Superperformance. You have a spectacular background operating in excellence. And what I would like to do is get a forefront, a snapshot of, how it all began. Can you take us back before you were a super performer and before you was able to recognize others as being? How did it all start with you? If you can start maybe with childhood, going into education.
Yeah, I really appreciate that opportunity. I grew up in central New York, Corning to be exact, a company town, really a beautiful part of upstate New York. And it had, a typical middle-class upbringing. My father was a company man, worked at the factory, one of the many factories in that area, and learned a lot of values from him, and also really genuinely appreciated the factory environment. Had a chance as a kid to visit, and was just mesmerized by the machines and the complexity. And I think some kids may see their dad being a fireman or something like that, and that's what they want to be. And for me, I just loved that factory environment. But I took a little bit of a turn in the sense that after going to college, I joined the Army, spent some time as an officer in the military. And I think that was a lot of the foundation around really starting to understand leadership and understand team building and understanding how to help people really reach their full potential. I think a lot of those experiences that I had early on in my career in the military really helped me see that regardless of anyone's background or education or upbringing or circumstances, we were all the same. And being able to kind of bring what it is you brought and being able to really deliver, what was necessary to sort of support your team is what makes soldiers, makes airmen and Marines and so forth really, really successful. And that foundation for me of really kind of counting on my team, counting on myself, was really probably the birth of what ends up becoming the book that is available today.
Okay. Bringing what you brought. Is that the quote? That's awesome. Because what that means to me is, you show up with who you are and what your talents are, and that's what makes a team.
It is.
Is that how you're presenting that?
It is. One of the things that we talk about in Superperformance is the idea of understanding, kind of what is your best practice, what is the root cause that generates your success, that we all have things that we bring to the table. We all have things that, can help us as individuals and certainly can, bring contributions to a team. I think when we judge everyone by asking everyone to have the same level of knowledge or skill in every topic, we're missing the point of how a team is supposed to work. You really want that diversity of perspective and experience and knowledge. And you want people to, not always agree, but at least be willing to listen. And when people kind of bring that perspective, that's what the definition of collaboration is: being able to kind of speak your voice, but also listen, with intent.
I agree 100%. I want to ask this, and I don't know if you brought up the topic in Super Performance. However, I had a conversation earlier today, a different podcast, and I
Yeah.
think that this topic is imperative.
Okay.
Can you see, now that there is so much definite difference between generations, from the boomers leading on down to Generation Z,
Yeah.
can you see those generations working together as a team? And if you can, because there's a lot of friction there from the boomers to the new kids. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you touched that in this book, but do you see what you're mentioning, people bringing their different talents? And that also would include the different generations of the kids being born, all they know is computers, in the opposite spectrum of Generation X, the boomers. How do you see these generations getting along to where they can work together as teams?
Yeah, I do. I don't necessarily really explicitly look at the question of generations and kind of comparing generations, but we definitely explore the idea that teams are made up of very different personalities and different, kind of perspectives and backgrounds and experiences. And I think the best leaders are the ones who really help that team kind of collaborate, helps find kind of what are the best practices, what are, kind of the contributions that everyone is making, and how do we sustain the contributions that help our team succeed. Being, a Gen X myself, I have an older son who's a millennial. I have a younger son who's a Gen Z. And of course, my parents being baby boomers, I guess I have maybe a snapshot of, kind of these diverse personalities. And I couldn't agree with you more. They are diverse personalities in the sense of the generational experience and sort of what people bring to the team, to the work that they're doing. And I think it's like any other team, any other situation. If you take somebody from the sales department and ask them to come work on the manufacturing floor, it's immediately a fish that is out of the water. The clothes that you're wearing are no longer appropriate because they might get caught in the equipment and get dirty. The type of conversation, even the language that we may use with each other, maybe being a little more coarse than polite when we're working on a machine. It's completely a different environment and situation. So it's not just always, differences in generations. It could be differences in our roles, differences in our backgrounds, differences in our experiences. And I think the recipe is always the same. It's really having empathy. It's recognizing that just because someone's perspective is different, it doesn't make it wrong. It just makes it different. And, in Super Performance, I really try to emphasize this idea of sort of looking for what is working, look for those root causes of success. And I think if I was leading a team today that had, Gen Z members and millennial members and Gen X members, and maybe we've got, a baby boomer or two, I would not want to try to think about what separates us, what makes us different, but what is the contribution? What is the perspective? What is the experience that each of those very diverse experiences and perspectives are bringing? Because what that allows me to do is have more knowledge, have more information, have more experience, and have more ways of thinking about solving problems because of that diversity. If I surround myself by having people who think exactly like I do, then what good is it to have those people around me if I can think for myself, if they're not offering me unique and different perspectives? But a lot of leaders like that. They don't like the pushback, they don't like the questions, but I think it's something we should welcome.
Excellent answer. Excellent answer, George. I agree 100%.
Excellent.
I once heard an author say, I knew I had a book in me. So I took that as that's something that all authors probably tell themselves. So I would like to ask you, when did you know that you had a book in you? When were you motivated and inspired enough to say it's time for me to write a book about this and put my knowledge out there?
Oh, I love this question. And the reason I love this question so much is the beginning of the book is actually my confession. I have, operated my own business for well over 20 years. I've kind of done this work for, over 30 now. And for most of that time, I kind of poked fun at people who wrote books and then went into companies and talked about their book and kind of did everything through the lens of this book or this series of books they've written. And I've always kind of pointed out that I'm not this person who is going to follow the book that I wrote and I'm here to sell you copies. And I've always been somebody who tries to have what I call utility, somebody who is going to be able to execute, someone who's going to be able to help you understand how to create value and help you lower costs, improve quality, speed, the effectiveness of your process. And there's not a book that is going to fit for your company because your company is unique and we're going to figure out, the best way, the best things for your organization. And of course, here I am this evening with you talking about my book. So there was a moment for sure. And I do talk about it in the book where a very close friend of mine sat me down and said that I really should capture these perspectives. Most of my career, I really defended and kind of kept a lot of these recipes, a lot of these strategies as kind of a brand, a personal secret, a way, that I generated the revenue for myself, my organization, and protected it, sometimes to great lengths. And, he said, you really need to get this message beyond just the clients you work with because it has such value. There's such benefit that so many people could, kind of really take and use and help their own careers and help their own small businesses and even their, larger organizations. And I really, kind of felt like that was a message that was, almost a calling that I needed to not be selfish and just think about how I earn money, but I needed to think about if this really does have utility, if it really is something that has value, and it has certainly sustained our business for, well over 20 years. We have a slice of the pie and it's plenty enough for us. There's no reason I can't share the rest of the pie with others. And that's how the book got written, deciding to basically spill our secrets, to put everything we know, everything that's generated revenue for us into roughly 300 pages and give it away for $30.
That's great, man. That is the Lord's work, as I call it, because
there may have been a moment.
Right. So it's you held on to the belief. You held on to the belief at the end of the day. I think as time goes by, legacy comes into play. And yes, you have kind of figured out a puzzle in your own way and in your own sense and decided to, like a magic show, you've decided to show people, okay, all this time I've been showing you the magic and tricking you with it. Well,
Yeah, yeah.
Here we go. I'll let you know how the magic trick was done.
Yeah, I love that analogy. It is a little bit of, getting that peek behind the scenes for sure. And I do honestly feel, because it was, the process of writing and editing, and it is a much more challenging process than I thought it would be. I wanted this to be a book that if somebody picked it up, that it had everything they needed to increase that utility, to generate value, and even potentially be a roadmap for creating their own consulting or training practice and utilizing these strategies, because they've served me well, and I hope they serve others well as well.
Awesome. That's so awesome, man. I commend you on that as well.
Thank you.
Um, your book, it has, if I am correct about this, it has strategies. It's 8 different strategies.
It is. Yeah, that's right.
Could you give us an insight, just like a snapshot of those real quick 8 different strategies?
Yeah, some of them are kind of thinking about things from a certain frame of mind, and others are a little bit more tool centric. One of the concepts we talk about is what we call the prison of expectations, and it's how you go about setting goals. That in a lot of cases, when you end up with goals with a team, the team works hard to make sure that it's a goal they can achieve. Because if you set a goal that the team doesn't really believe they can achieve, that they're going to fail, then they're not going to try, because they're going to fail anyway. And, if I set the goal too low, then obviously people are not putting in their full potential. But there's this little gap, this little space, where I call it the prison of expectations, where if I try harder, you're going to raise my goal. So therefore, I don't try harder. I just want to live in this little spot, which is not too hard, not too easy. It's almost like Goldilocks, right in that kind of sweet spot. And that locks individuals in their career. It locks people in their team. It locks organizations into goals that are well less than their full potential. So we have an entire strategy around dealing with what we call the prison of expectations. There's also a chapter around, what I call we versus me. And it really is, a little bit around leadership, the idea that leaders often kind of really think about them. They think about their needs. They think about their organization. And I, coach a lot of leaders, a lot of people in a lot of places. And I sometimes will use, the analogy of a Sherpa, somebody who's, helping them climb a mountain. Uh, at the end of the day, when you get to the top of that mountain, do you ever wonder kind of who takes the picture? Because you always see those pictures of somebody like on the top of the mountain, so proud, maybe they got a flag or a sign for their family. But somebody took the picture. The selfie is kind of hard to do in the 100-mile-an-hour winds. That's the Sherpa, and the Sherpa is not usually in the picture, and it's usually not somebody anybody talks about. And what ends up happening is that mountain climb that the team accomplished, the Sherpa is going to do it again next Tuesday, where the person who climbed the mountain, this might be the thing they talk about endlessly for the rest of their lives, and they just did it one time. I really encourage leaders to have the Sherpa mentality, to think about, kind of the service of helping people achieve their goals and helping them reach outcomes, and not making it, how do I get into your picture? Let them have their moment and let them get there. Also talk a lot about, finding the friction in organizations. Have some great stories from factory floors, from operations, hospitality operations, factories, where, discovering where issues are happening in the process and helping people, build systems instead of kind of focusing on the superheroes that often kind of come in and fix whatever has gone wrong this hour, this day, this week. Systems thinking is something that I think everyone can sit back and logically appreciate, but very few organizations really practice having great systems and having a perspective where I don't want to reward these superheroes that fix things. I want to respect them, but I don't want to reward them. I really want to reward the people who help us have great systems. And being somebody who can help organizations create a great system that's reliable and usable by anyone is something that just has enormous, enormous value. And, have a lot of other concepts as well across those 8 strategies, but maybe a little preview for you.
Great. That's without reading the book. Without reading the book, that's a great synopsis.
Thank you.
So, the title of the book. There's a lot of, oh man, Marvel, Batman, the Avengers. Within this time span, you are battling against superheroes. The title of the book, Super. How did you come to that term? How did you come to that terminology? And I asked this question because, let me give you a backstory, right?
Okay.
I was never a superhero. Of course, I grew up Gen X, so we had He-Man and we had She-Ra and we had Castle Grayskull, but we had regular people, So then now I have, my son come around and now he's into these superheroes. What I didn't know, he's into the Avengers, and what I didn't know is that went back, that dated back even Boomer's time, but I just wasn't in that circle. So as him being a young kid, eventually I start watching the Avengers. I start watching the story of the superheroes. And one day I am watching Iron Man. And Iron Man has gotten captured. And he's captured with another man that's captured. And he has all of these skills. Iron Man has all of these skills. And the man that he's captured with, as Iron Man wants to give up and say, this is it. This is the end of the road because I don't have long. And right. The captured man tells him, you only have the time that you're allotted. You have to deal with the time that you're allotted. Yes. And that's what makes you super as opposed to being average. So that's something that I stick with every single day and that I think about every single day. You only have the time that you're allotted. And to be a leader, that's what you have to deal with, and that's what you have to deal with then. So I say, in comparison to that,
yes,
where would you say the title Super in your book stems from?
Yeah, I love the analogy. I love the comparison that you made because I think it's such really a great explanation for how Superperformance as a title came to be. One concept that is in the book that is really core to the practice, to the strategies, is this idea of what I call the golden hour. And the golden hour is where, regardless of the work you're doing, it can be the podcast we're on this evening. It can be, the truck that you're driving. It could be the machine you're operating. It could be the customer service desk at the hotel that you're staffing. Doesn't matter. Whatever that is, we all have these magic moments. We all have these periods where everything is just working. Everything is clicking. Everything is happening the way I would like it to. It's really almost perfect in some ways. I'm kind of in the flow. I'm in the zone. And I think we've all experienced, kind of that moment of flow, that moment of kind of being in that zone. And in that moment, you kind of think, boy, I wish I could be here forever. I wish, every minute of every podcast was this good. I wish that, every customer I was able to handle that well. I wish that every hour I ran this machine, it ran this good. And that idea is that perfect is not measured by time. And I think the Iron Man, analogy is such a good one. We as individuals, as human beings, when we think about a goal, we think about an end state. We think about the destination. We think about that top of the mountain that I was talking about you climb to. And if I'm going to be perfect, I have to reach this state where I'm now perfect forever. Well, that is just your own kind of mental way of thinking of it. The reality is you were perfect today. You did have a golden moment today. You may have had a golden hour, or maybe it was a golden few hours where you were enormously creative or successful in the things that you're really good at. And that really is, kind of the explanation for super performance. When you look at the cover, it kind of feels a little egocentric, but as you read the book or listen to the audiobook, you realize that we're all super performers, and our goal in life, just as you pointed out for Tony Stark, is just extending how long we can do it for, how often it happens. And if I can extend out those periods where everything is working, if I can increase the frequency of how often that's happening, then I'm living that better life, just like Iron Man was told, right?
That's right, man. That's right, man. That was an excellent answer. Excellent, excellent, excellent.
Great question.
Yeah, man. So tell me, man, what does the future look like? What is from the book? Short-term goals, long-term goals. What are you looking to do with exclusively? Actually, if we can speak on your community service, your nonprofit,
Yeah.
because I think that's awesome. I think that's awesome. Can you give us a little backdrop on that?
Yeah, and that actually, in some ways, kind of fits with what's next, and what am I doing? I certainly am continuing. My blended learning serves really large Fortune 100 size companies with corporate training solutions, and really everything we talk about in super performance. And we're going to continue to do that, for hopefully as long as my health and maybe the organization can. But at the same time, really interested in spreading the message of what super performance is, to help younger people be able to start their own businesses, be able to utilize these practices to help their careers. And I'm extremely passionate about helping nonprofit organizations. In the limited amount of time, I wish I had more to be able to help those organizations. What I've learned is that you have so many people who have such big hearts, who have such passion around the mission that their nonprofit has. And a lot like small business people, that they're, really good at baking, so they open a bakery, or they're really good at fixing things, so they become a plumber or an electrician. In some cases, the baker is not a very good accountant. The plumber is not very good at marketing. And it's the sad reality that the bakery fails because they didn't pay their taxes correctly, or the plumber doesn't get enough business because they didn't know how to make Facebook ads. They could fix anything, but they
Right.
couldn't fix creating an ad. That's my point, is that those charities need, your marketing skills. You're clearly very talented and very experienced in that space, and they can benefit from my team building and leadership advice. And if you're, a professional in scheduling and planning, you may be able to help them with buying or identifying, the materials they need for giving away the food packages here at Christmas. Because the person who's doing it today may not have the experience of what you do every day as somebody who buys raw materials for a factory. You know how to get the right amount in the right place at the right time, and you get paid to do it. And I see that as your talent. I see that as what can be that golden hour. Take that golden hour down to your favorite charity. Take it down to the church. Take it down to the community, and don't just volunteer to pack the boxes on Christmas Eve. Volunteer 2 or 3 weeks earlier to make sure the right food is going to be in those boxes, if that's your talent.
Wow. I have to say, man, that golden hour, that's something. That
Thank you.
is something. You may not have it for, you know, 8 hours out of the day, 12
Exactly.
hours. What a job with 9 to 5 would want you to have a perfect 9 to 5 shift.
Right.
But you have an hour that you can really put into that company. And that is your golden hour. And it means a lot. That's good, man. That's really good.
Well, I appreciate it. And the thing that's really given me the most joy has never been, kind of getting, uh, somebody who's a vice president or a senior leader to say nice things or be appreciative. I certainly love when they do. It has always been when an operator, somebody who brought their lunch to work, who likely has to pick up their kids when they're finished with the shift, when they look at you and say, that made a difference, that was a big deal. And, especially in manufacturing, a lot of times, they get beaten up. They're being judged on how much downtime did the machine have? How many mistakes did you make this hour? And it's kind of hard to keep track. It's kind of hard to understand until the end of the game, whether I won or I lost, because who knows what's going to happen right at the closing bell. I just want to get through the end. But I know every operator I've ever met in my career, if I ask them, how long have you been able to go without that machine hassling you, with everything working good? They got a number. They know that the best I've ever been able to do is like 30 minutes, because this thing is a
Right.
pain in the butt. It's
Right.
just after me all the time. And I'm like, okay, what would it take to go 45? Like, what would you fix if I gave you a magic wand? What would be the thing that would let us run 45 minutes this afternoon? And they almost always have something, and then we fix it. And then when they run 45 minutes, they're like, hey, that was a lot better. Okay, what about an hour? And it's really not complicated, but it does require an entirely different way of really working with the people who do the work.
Wow. I have to think on that for a second.
It kind of it kind of blows your mind a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because I always worked in manufacturing. I used to love working in warehouses, manufacturing, and
Yeah,
that was my shtick for a while.
sure.
And I had it one time to look at myself based on leadership, right? So here's the story is I worked at Miller Brewing Company
Yeah,
and everything was manufactured well. And like you said, I knew every machine in the building.
yep,
But I worked there as a temporary employee for 2 years. So that means no benefits, no time off, nothing. We was working 6 hours a day, 12 to 16 hours per day.
sure, yep.
And I could tell you, like you just said, exactly how long it would take before the keg was stuck on the belt, how long it would take for me to get it off. I could tell you how long this other machine would take to bring the bottles down. I worked
Yep.
every machine in the building.
Yes.
However, because I was a temporary employee, at the end of the summers, they would lay the temporary employees off. And then 2 weeks later, if people qualified, they would call them back and offer them full-time employment.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing, George.
Yeah.
I was upset for years because I knew every machine in the building. There was a machine that I could not operate. I was the sending everyone to lunch. I would walk around to send everyone to lunch,
Yeah,
right? In the
you
manufacturing.
were relief. Yep, you
I
were
was
relief.
relief. I worked
Yep.
as relief.
Yep.
When it was time to call everyone back to hire them permanently, I did not receive a call back. And that upset me for years, George.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But here's the thing that I finally realized. I don't know what management scene, I don't know, but I will admit that someone seen that was not the place for me. I that was not, I wouldn't have been happy or satisfied in that role.
Yeah.
So it took me years to see that there was a leader somewhere that said, we're going to hire somebody else because this guy here, maybe he has more talent, maybe he's bored with it or something, but that's not the particular guy that we want to operate these machines. And I must say, it had to take someone to point that out as being a leader.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I could totally, what you explained, it almost gives me goosebumps because I certainly have witnessed this kind of scenario before. And I'm going to offer my perspective on what I think happened. And it actually is the very first strategy that I shared with you. I expect that there was a bit of a prison of expectations. And I've watched this happen so many times. And somebody who does have a lot of talent, has a lot of hustle, has the ability to do a lot of great things, you come into an environment where you start doing those things and you're kind of a threat to everybody else who's there because they've kind of found a sweet spot where if I do more, I'm going to be expected more. If I do less, I'm certainly going to not meet expectations. And I just want to stay in this little zone here. And I certainly have watched where people have given negative recommendations or they've kind of made up things just because they don't want somebody making them look bad. They don't want somebody kind of pushing a little bit. So I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there, but I've watched that scenario happen more than once. Had it happen to me for sure. Tell a story, talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's when you were kind of, painting the picture of just kind of being in that type of situation. I'm like, I know that I've been there before.
Yeah.
Can't say what it is for sure. Can't put my finger on it, but I truly believe in our talents. And if you're a true people person, and some stuff is nefarious, of course, but yet and still, like, I would rather be doing this. I'd rather be podcasting. I'd rather be a marketer. I like running around outside, not inside, so whoever judged that call was right.
Well, it's, I think it's like what you said earlier. We all have these moments where, we end up where we should end up. Right. And that path sometimes is painful in those moments. I certainly had disappointments and challenges in my career and also, struggled to try to understand, why is this happening to me or why didn't I get the opportunity I felt that I deserved? And I couldn't agree with you more. And I think it's a great lesson, especially for younger people, that your life is a lot longer than you think it is. You just only lived a very little bit of it. And I promise it's going to be okay. It doesn't feel that way today, but I promise it's going to be okay.
Right. And one thing my father always told me that still sticks with me to this day, 25, 30 years later, things will work themselves out.
Absolutely. You don't know how, but they will for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
man. So what about speaking engagements? Is that something that you are currently doing or something that you're looking to do?
Yeah. It is something I really love doing. I actually had a chance to do a speaking engagement with a company here just a couple of weeks ago. My company website, myblendedlearning.com, my personal website, georgepesansky.com. Either one of those, you can reach out to me either, for individual coaching support, even, answering questions about the book. I love talking with people who are curious and want to learn. And, you might be shocked that I would actually enjoy, engaging with you, your audience, in just a conversation, just trying to clarify or answer questions, including, the opportunity to speak to a group and hopefully inspire some ideas.
So awesome, man. What you gave the website. Do you have any social media channels that you would like for people to follow you on?
Oh, I do. Yeah. We certainly are on Facebook, George Pesansky, and Instagram, also on LinkedIn under Deliberate Improvement, and all of my social media links and channels, as well as all the podcasts I do, all the articles and content that we write for the media. And of course, being able to get copies of both the hardcover book, but also the Kindle and audiobook. We also have the audiobook that we've got released, which I had the chance to narrate. That's all on georgepesansky.com. You can find all of that content in one place.
Okay, man. This is good stuff. Good stuff. Good leadership stuff. Anyone that's out there listening, you make sure that you follow George Pesansky, and that's not with the Z. It's Pesansky.
It is.
I just want to say, man, I want to thank you for coming on today. You dropped plenty of jewels and gems and things that people can pick up on, and hopefully they'll follow you. I know that I'm going to follow you on your social media. And these are the type of conversations that is going to push us all forward. So thanks again. And to anyone that's out there listening, continue to make moves, make money so you can make meaningful memories. And we'll catch up with you next time.
Thank you so much.